Real quick, does the discovery of all those dead children that were found in unmarked graves all over Canada, I don't know exactly where they were, have anything possibly to do with Mormonism that you've heard of?
I don't know anything about that. Nope.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about that with Mormonism.
Interesting. Yeah, there's. So you went into this. We did one called Mormonism and Money, and we went into this somewhat.
Well, yeah.
And this has roots, deep roots that goes back to Joseph Smith. I mean, and so we went and elaborated.
Yeah.
That.
I just think I think that what's difficult about kind of like that amount of money is this is a not-for-profit organization that takes donations, tithing from its members, requires 10% tithing to be paid by its members in order for them to participate in the temple. And the reason that you go to the temple is so that you can have ordinances that provide you salvation and exaltation. So indirectly, you're buying your way into exaltation and salvation. But what's really stunning about this is the members of the church think that they're giving 10% of their tithing. I did to humanitarian aid. And I thought maybe some of it's used to
help the church
operate its operating expenses.
Right.
I knew that it subsidized Brigham Young University's, tuition fees. What I didn't know is that excess funds, excess tithing, the church was like, well, let's invest that in the stock market. And I mean, just imagine Jesus being alive today and would he have said, or if he's really the one leading these prophets, would he have said, oh yeah, I don't want to give that tithing back to the people. Put it in the markets. I want to get a 7% return.
Invest into the local temple. I want to make sure that I can get back some kickback from the priests.
So that investment, just turns into massive, massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
And so this is probably it's the richest centralized church in the world. You could argue the Catholic Church might be richer
overall,
but you'd have to combine all of the dioceses. They're all separated and they are their own organizations in the Catholic Church.
Wow.
So this is the this is the richest centralized church in the world.
Thank you for that question earlier. I saw one that I thought was interesting. Is this the case? Mormons believe John the Baptist came back in the flesh and baptized Joseph Smith?
No, I mean, kind of. So what happened was, this is an interesting kind of interlude that happened during the foundation of the church. So Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery, really Oliver Cowdery came in to help finish the Book of Mormon. When the Book of Mormon was started, Joseph was dictating the story to Emma Smith and to Martin Harris. Those first 116 pages were actually lost. There's a whole story behind that you actually have on your channel. People can go back and watch.
And I think South Park
talks about this. It's Martin Harris's wife, is suspicious. These 116 pages are lost. So no work on the Book of Mormon occurred for many, many months until Oliver Cowdery showed up. And Oliver Cowdery's like, well, I'll help you finish it. I'm oversimplifying this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then Joseph and Oliver start doing the whole thing, and Joseph dictates it. Oliver writes it down. You can tell, by the way, that Oliver is the one that's authoring this book because it's in his language. Anytime you read anything else that he's written down, it's very Oliver-esque.
Yeah.
And so they together start the church as co-presidents. But they had to start they start this church, but then they are claiming that they are starting the original church of Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ implemented when he was on earth in Jerusalem. Well, how does the Book of Mormon give him that authority? It doesn't necessarily. Right. And there were questions about his authority to baptize. And so they came up with a revelation, him and Oliver, that John the Baptist appeared to them as a resurrected angel and gave them the authority, which we call the Aaronic priesthood, to Joseph and Oliver. And then they baptized each other. So Joseph baptized Oliver and Oliver baptized Joseph. But they claimed that the authority came from the John the Baptist angel. Yeah. So it's kind of accurate what he said. But
yeah. So he says a statue of John the Baptist on the temple grounds tells you. Or at least I guess there might be a statue.
Yeah, there's a huge, so it's definitely part of the Mormon doctrine that John the Baptist came back. And I mean, it's throughout Mormon doctrine that prophets of old came and restored their portions of the restored gospel to Joseph Smith. So,
including Abraham.
I don't remember.
I'm talking about the
the story we're talking about
with polygamy.
No,
but
like
the Sarah doctrine, like
the
all of
law
that.
of Sarah.
Yeah, the law of Sarah.
But Elijah came back to them and appeared to them. John the Baptist, Peter, James, and John, Moses. So they had lots of visitations from these to give them authority.
Right. Look, Motorhead says, why did God invent Mormons? So Christians can know how Jews feel about adding new books to their Torah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Well, notice it is also a personal revelation type of movement. So
it's that's the one thing that's interesting about the Mormon church, and really just churches that really kind of cropped up during this time in American history, is that the church really began to, or religions were democratized by American democracy, right? Mm-hmm. You could start whatever religion you wanted and believe whatever you wanted. So that's where we see Mormonism come to being in that period of time. Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, and all like the whole evangelical movement came out of this time in history. And so you can see like these threads of, well, I received personal revelation. Why can't I receive it? Joseph Smith did. Why can't I get a rock, right? And look in a hat. And that's really what happened. There were, after Joseph Smith died, Sidney Rigdon claimed that he was the heir of the church and started his own church. There was another James String, who thought he had the correct revelation and received personal revelation. Mm-hmm. And so that does like kind of complicate,
right?
Trying to maintain control in your church when everyone's allowed to have their own revelation.
And that's why there's so many different. And that was a fun series that I did with Bryce. That's why I was like, all right. I want to get to this one next. Where's it at? Right here. DC saying you guys haven't touched on the age of Joseph Smith's victims. Yeah. This is not a trivial point, which we agree. He was molesting 14-year-old girls, but we'll get into that if we once we get through the super chat here. Alan Bird, why did Emma deny that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy and he found the reorganized church and claim LDS church came up with polygamy?
So when Joseph Smith died, Emma, so I was telling this to you earlier, Derek, the Mormon church, the origination of the church really originated from Joseph and Emma together. Mm-hmm. Again, she was the first person to scribe the dictation of the Book of Mormon. So they were in this together. And I do believe that she felt that this was her church as it was as much Joseph's. And he would tell her that it was their children that would take over the church. When Joseph died, her youngest or her oldest son that should have been able to take over the church was like, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, too young to take over the church. So there's a gap in leadership. So Brigham Young decides to take his faction of Mormonism out to Utah. Brigham Young doubles down on polygamy. Well, right before Joseph Smith goes to Carthage, he, according to other journals like Emma's and Lucy's, he confessed to Emma that he knew all along polygamy was wrong. He was really feeling terrible that he's going to go to prison. The garments that he used, you remember how I told you they sewed like red marks in the two breasts? So he literally threw them away. This is why Joseph Smith wasn't wearing his garments when and neither did Hiram when they were shot in Carthage jail. So, he basically said to Emma, I was wrong about this all the time. And when I get out of prison, we're going to get rid of this.
Because it's chaotic.
Because it's totally ruining everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was like, great. And so, but he dies, he gets killed. And so when her son's old enough, and I have empathy for Emma, I think she's going to say to her son, your father was never the one that wanted to that practice polygamy. It was Brigham Young.